As you guys can see, this is what the WebEngage dashboard looks like. Majorly, it's split into 4 parts. One is the data and insights. The second part is the campaign manager, where you can see how to configure campaigns, as well as journeys, as well as automated approaches for different ways to go ahead with. The next part is the personalization, which involves the inline content as well as on-site notifications. And the last part is the settings, where you can give access to your team as well as different members, set up your account, see who made changes at the end of the day. Before I get started, guys, if at any point you guys think I'm being too fast, feel free to drop a message in the chat and I can address the questions as well as your concern when I see it. All right. So today's agenda is majorly going to be covering around users, the user profiles, segment creation, campaign creation, and a little walkthrough of the different things that you can do using journeys. All right. I'll get started with the users section of the dashboard. Before the user section, the main part that I want you to do is once you're done with your integration and onboarding, it's important that you take a look at your integration status. So if you go to data platform and look at the integrations, you can see how your integration is done across website, Android, as well as iOS. And below that, you can see also your channel integration. You would have your text setup, you would have your SMS, you would have your email, WhatsApp, anything and everything about your setup would be shown there. If it's success and green, you're all good to go. If it's stale or maybe no data coming in, then that's something that you would have to take a look at and fix also at a later stage. I hope we've been clear till now. Just moving on to the users section of the dashboard. So this section basically tells you about your users who have come onto the platform at any point. And so it's split into 3 different parts. One is the overview, the second is the analyze section, and list of users. I would be going through each part in detail. In the overview section, there are 3 major splits that you can see. One is the total user count, the next is the known user count, and then the third is the monthly active users. Total users is basically all the users that have come onto your platform since our SDK has been placed on your website or app, and also all the users that you would have historically passed information about from other platforms. So this count at the end of the day is all the users that have ever come onto your website or app. The known user count is basically something that tells you which user can be reached out, whose email ID and phone number that we have identified. This is the kind of guys who we can reach out to on the channels that I call as push channels, which is basically pushing your communication to users outside of the platform. And the third part is the monthly active users. These users don't have to be known. They can be unknown users as well as known users. These are people who have come to your platform, your website or app in the last 30 days. And we've also tried to split it down into website, Android, and iOS. So it gives you a clear picture of which platform is giving you the maximum number of users and which platform you should start with in terms of getting quick wins once you get started with using the platform. The next section of the dashboard is the activity side, where we have the chart that basically talks about monthly active users, weekly active users, and daily active users. You also have the option to split it out across different timelines. You've got yesterday, you've got last 7 days, you've got last 30 days, last 90 days, and also your custom dates if you want to look at it. So I'll just look at last 90 days, so it gives you an overall picture of things. So if I'm looking in the last 90 days for this dashboard, I can see there is a consistent number of monthly active users, which stays around 33,000 users. Now, this is the overall section. We also can split it in across web and Android and iOS separately. And if you want to look at a view separately for each platform, you can do that as well by checking and unchecking this option. You also have the option to download this report. So if you click on this option, you can directly download this report. It would give you a daily count of the timeline you have selected and basically tell you what are the total number of users across these different channels. You also can pin it on your custom dashboard, which I would cover at a later section. And you can also view it as a bar or a table view. So when you download it, this is what will be available for you. The next section, this is one of the most important sections of the dashboard, which talks about your channel reachability. So all the users that you see in this section will be under these reachability section, and it will tell you which channels you have the maximum number of users that can be reachable on. So in terms of getting started, if you're looking for quick wins in terms of getting your messages across to the larger section of the audience, then this section basically tells you what percentage of your audience is reachable on what channel. So we've got the percentages as well as your overall numbers. So if I'm looking at it from this chart, I would definitely get started with push notifications. Why? Because it's got 43% of my audience. It's got 50,000 users. While on-site notifications is only 1.6% and it's only 10,000 users. So you want to be you want to be engaging with the maximum number of users at any point in time, right? So push would be a go-to channel for me from this data right now. So if you look at it, you can also see that only 70% of your users are reachable, which means they haven't been identified or their device hasn't been registered. So maybe it's something from an integration perspective that we have to solve as well. Now moving on to the next section, which is the analyze section. So you have the option to toggle this down to known users as well as unknown users. By now, I'm sure that everybody knows what an unknown user is and a known user is as well. So for ease, I will just use all users here. This basically helps you to split your data across different dimensions that we are capturing, as well as your custom dimensions. So for example, if I'm looking at it for this data set, I'm looking at all users across the different countries that they are visiting my website or app. So if I'm looking at it, United States is definitely the highest number of users here. So if I'm going to be sending campaigns specific to US, that's going to do me well as well. And you can also see across different the other countries as well. You can further split it down by selecting, maybe if you want to look at users across countries and across the platform. So then you can do that as well. Yeah, so if I am looking at this, what I've done here is I've split all users across country and their platform. So in terms of naming convention, 1 is website, 2 is Android, and 3 is iOS. So if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at all users and also which platform are they coming from at the end of the day. So this can help you figure out in terms of who to target, which devices to target, and how to go about your engagement strategy once you're live with passing all the data on WebEngage. You also have the option to split it by different options for ease of simplicity. I selected the country and platform. I hope this kind of clears out your questions around here. So yeah, you can use your custom dimensions as well as our system dimensions to split your audience and check. You also have the option to download this again and also pin it on the custom dashboard. Again, you can view it as line, bar, or table.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Hi,
Please.
Jesse. Hope I'm not interrupting.
No worries. Please go on.
So my quick question was, you talked about known and unknown users, right? So is it an WebEngage data-driven known unknown user, or our platform logged in status known unknown user?
So at the end of the day, once the integration is done, right, our SDK is ready to capture information from your website and app. So the moment somebody logs into your platform, that data is sent from your system to our system. And once that data is sent, and I have called the login function, that means the user is known to me. So at the end of the day, it's a connection between both our systems.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Moving on to the third section. This is the list of users. This basically tells you all the users that have come onto your platform, that is known as well as unknown. Now, if I want to split it further, I can just take a known user section. All right. So this gives you the name, email ID, phone number, country, total sessions created on, and last seen. Now, if you want to further add columns, you can do that as well. You can click on the filter option here and basically select all the system and custom attributes that you want in this report, and it will populate the data here in this section. You also have the option to download this from this section of the dashboard. You can also export this to Facebook or even Google. I will just move on to one user profile as an example. So basically, if I'm looking at it, this is a user profile that our SDK has captured. Now, under the user profile, we have a further 5 tabs, which I'll be talking about. The first tab is the basic info. In the basic info, you can cover the name. You would be able to find the name, email ID, phone number, location, and activity. All of these data points you don't have to capture by yourself. Our SDK is present on your website and app, and these are by default captured once your integration is success. You also have the first acquisition details below. So this is the basic info, and all of these are system attributes, and you do not have to capture them. It's already being captured by default. Now, moving on to the attribute section, like I said, WebEngage uses 2 different ways to capture information. One is the system attribute, which by default our SDK captures, and the second is the custom attributes. These custom attributes are very specific to a particular business. Like say, for example, you are an e-commerce client and you want to look at, let's say, what is the average order value of all your customers. Then you can have that custom attribute configured. If you want to look at what is the first purchase date, so you can have like an anniversary for them in terms of personalization, then you can capture that as well. So all the data that is relevant to your particular business falls under custom, and you can configure that for yourself. Moving on to the next section, this is the devices. So once a user logs in, or not even log in, comes onto the website or app, what we have is our SDK. Our SDK also captures information about the device. So you can see the device manufacturer, you can see the device model, you can see the carrier, and then a bunch of other information as well. Now, how we know that they are reachable on push is basically when we have an app ID against it. We know the app version, we know the SDK version which you have done, and which platform also it is on. Is it Android or iOS? And you can also look at the total session, the total time, and the last used. This is specific to this particular user. The 4th tab talks about channels. So in the first section, what I spoke about was channel reachability. So all your users, how are they reachable across different channels? Now in this particular section, you are looking at this user, how is he reachable on, and which channel is he reachable on? So if I'm looking at it, he's reachable on push. Why we had seen in the devices, there was an Android device. So that's why he's reachable. In app, he's not yet reachable. So maybe he has to go to settings and enable that. SMS is reachable. Why? Because we have a phone number. WhatsApp is also reachable. Now, each of these channels, you can manually say if a user wants to unsubscribe himself, you can manually ensure that he doesn't receive any message from a particular channel as well. Now, this can be separate across promotional and transactional messages. Say, for example, Jesse as a user does not want to be receiving promotional messages. But if I order something from the platform, I want to receive that message, right? So none of your transactional messages will be interrupted, even if it's read here. The next section is the events stream of the user. So basically, you can see what are the different events the user has done. You have the option to filter it down by last 30 days or last 7 days or even yesterday. You can see, for example, I as a user has come onto the platform on 6 Jan. I have a WhatsApp message that I'm eligible to receive, but it is queued at this point. I will talk about queuing at a campaign level discussion when I do that. But for example, if I want to look at, say, a push message is sent, you can see that as well. And inside the push, you can see the campaign ID, the campaign name to know what kind of campaign were you sending. Then you've got if the result is success, if it's the error code is there. So error code basically tells us in case you send a message and the user didn't receive it, we have different error codes, right? From this, we can come to know where is the problem and why probably the user did not receive it at the end of the day. So if you look at it, there is a bunch of different events that you can look at. And yeah, basically anything and everything that a user does on your website or app will be captured in the event stream. Yeah, I think somebody had a question. Sorry.
Yes. So Jesse, we have questions in the chat.
We have 2 questions, Jesse. I'll read it out. So one is that, say if a user is marked unreachable or red in this reachability, can we still send them a transactional communication or that will fail?
Sorry, Nitya, I was just looking at it. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was asking, so the question is that if a user is not reachable or marked red in the channel reachability here, can you still send them a transactional communication, or will that fail?
Yeah, exactly, right. So if I'm looking at it, this section of the dashboard for the user is only for promotional messaging. Transactional messages will go irrespective of this. Even if he marks himself unreachable, if he has to have like a transactional message, majorly transactional messages are like order completed or like order placed, which are like important messages, right? So that will definitely be sent even if he's unreachable on this particular channel here.
Okay, thanks. And another question, Jesse, is that how can someone target or retarget their historic users in WebEngage before integrating? If they have whatever thousands or millions of users, how can they import and then retarget or target them using these various channels?
All right. So if you have historical data that you want to upload onto WebEngage, there are two ways to go about it. One is you can do a CSV upload of the information, or you can do it through REST APIs. What I will do is I will quickly go to the data platform section, the data management. So if you look under the data management tab, right, you have the option to upload user data or upload events data. So all your historical information, you can either do it through a CSV upload from here, and then it will populate on the platform. Now, since you're new to the platform, you can also have the option to download a sample CSV. And this will basically tell you how WebEngage expects you to pass your data, in what format it should be, in terms of like, should it be epoch, should it be what time zone, should it be in milliseconds, should it be in terms of email ID or phone number or user ID. This is important. Why? Because this directly determines the hygiene of the data on the dashboard. So I would strongly recommend everybody who uploads data to download a sample CSV before going ahead and uploading their files. Now, once that is done, you can also see the status once you have uploaded your file. You can see the total number of records, who it was uploaded by, the date it's uploaded on, and also the status. Now, in case there is an error, we also give you the option to download the file. And in the file that you download, there would be a separate column called errors, telling you which record is causing the error and what the error is. So this basically helps you to ensure that you pass the right information in the right format that WebEngage can read it. Nitya, I hope that answered everybody's question.
One question here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please go on.
Okay. So let's say, WebEngage expects us to give the document in a format, right? User ID and all that. What if I don't have those details? Let's say I have only their first name, last name, email ID, and phone number. I don't have anything else. Yeah.
Okay. So if you have only first name, last name, email ID, and phone number, just have those columns in your file. That's it.
Okay. I can leave the other fields empty.
Yes. So what happens is, at the end of the day, if you have only, say, for example, I have only user ID and email, what I can do is just create a file with user ID and email, and this data will be populated on the WebEngage dashboard. And if you go to the basic info under the user profile, you would see name, email ID, and phone number. The rest of it will be blank.
Got it. And let's say I want to reach out to them on offsite, maybe on Facebook or Google, right? Those kind of campaign management, because they can't opt out of that, obviously. So yeah, how to do that? I'm sorry, I think somebody else was going to ask the question.
All right. So if you want to target these users specifically, right, I will cover that section under the segment creation section. So just wait on, I will be going to that section and I'll tell you how to do it on Facebook and Google. All right.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? Shall I move on?
Yeah, I had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So it's for a past historical data, it's difficult to have the events data captured, right? So we're just uploading the customer user data. Now, let's say, for example, if I am the customer and I've given a mobile number and an email address, obviously email and SMS would be the channels which will be in the green check mark. All right. Yeah. But let's say web push notifications are across right now. But what happens, like, will that get automatically updated when the user again logs on now that WebEngage is integrated? Will it give him a pop-up automatically?
Okay, so how it works is, at the end of the day, our SDK is placed on your website and app, right? Now you pass historical information, say user ID, email, and phone number. So right now, your user is reachable on email and phone number. All right. Now, same user, once he comes onto your website or app again, what happens is our SDK will be able to capture this user. Now, once he logs in, that is with his email ID or phone number, there is a profile stitching that happens by default at our end. So I know Jesse as a user has now logged into the website or app. Now, if I go ahead and enable my web push notifications, then I will be able to receive web push notifications. For Android, if he downloads the app, by default, generally it is yes to all notifications, so he will be eligible to receive it. For iOS, he might probably have to allow notifications manually. So then your user becomes reachable on these channels.
Got it. Thanks a lot.
And sorry, just to add on, if you might have gotten, say, the opt-in tokens for a website push notification or mobile push notification, some of these tokens can also be migrated. So the website or the device will automatically give that information to WebEngage, and that token can be migrated. So they don't have to opt in again as well in few of these cases, if you are using that channel before and if you had that opt-in already. So that migration can also happen as soon as the user comes and use the platform after you implement WebEngage.
Got it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I had a question in terms of the website particularly. Does the user need to log in essentially on the website to track all of his engagement? Because particularly for a lot of D2C brands, right, the person does not really log in essentially. They just, check out, place an order and check out. So how would that really impact, say, if a user is not really logging in into the website, like probably creating a user account on the website essentially?
Okay, all right. Let's take a step back here. Like I said, right, we've got known as well as unknown users on WebEngage, right? So what happens is, when I, as a new user, come onto your website or app, WebEngage associates an unknown user ID with this profile. All right. Now, this user's event stream will contain anything and everything that the user has done. At this point, the user has not logged in, so it's an unknown user profile.
Okay.
Now, the moment he logs in, okay, now actually hold on. Now, the same user does his events, he goes through, browses a particular product, he adds to cart, but he doesn't do anything. It is still unknown at this point in time. All right. Now, the user leaves the website. WebEngage has stored this information with an unknown, with an ID, saying that this is the user, this is the events he's done, but it's still unknown. Now, after 2 days, the same user comes onto the platform. Now, at this point, I have created another user ID, again called an unknown user profile, but this time the user logs in. Now, when this happens, there is a profile stitching that happens at our end, saying Jesse as a user came 2 days back onto the platform and he has done all these things. And now the second user is actually come in and logged in. So there's a profile stitching that happens. And this, once this connection is done, he is reachable on multiple channels. And all of this data that he's done is stored under one user profile.
But again, when you say logs in, does it actually essentially mean him just going there?
I'll answer that, Drishti. I understand where this is coming from. And so especially just to put perspective, right, for a lot of D2C websites, not many users register or log in. They just probably use the guest checkout option. Now, in those cases, the login for WebEngage can also be someone who is doing a checkout and inputting their details. In that cases also, we can mark the user logged in or known, because we are getting the personal PII information, which is the name and the contact and all those information. So in the checkout step or checkout process also, automatically we recommend brands to pass the login and make them identifiable, so that even if they don't register or use your login option on the website, they are still known users in the platform and you have the information about them.
Makes sense.
So does that answer?
Yeah, that answers my query.
Yeah. So login can be irrespective of the login function or irrespective of someone giving an information. So say, for example, you can also run these newsletter banners or surveys on your website and ask for information, and the user can be logged in at that stage also. So there are a lot of hacks around those.
Got it.
So
Fair
this is just adding on to Nitya's point. There is a function called login that you can call with any other event that they're doing as well. So what you would do is call that function, and once you call that function, we can store that information. Just a disclaimer, web push and push does not need the user to log in. They can be sent to any users, known or unknown. They don't need to be logged in.
Agreed. No, fair enough. That makes sense.
What other kind of campaigns can we do on for unknown users?
For unknown users, basically you can cover, you've got push, you've got web push, you've got your on-site campaigns that you can do as well. So
only on-site.
On-site.
Only on-site.
No, if they download the app, then we have app notifications in-app and push as well.
What about Google or Facebook through cookies?
Through cookies, we can do it, but they would still be unknown. So I would just have an ID, and you can export that ID onto Google and Facebook, and then you can target the same user. But again, I do not have first-hand information about this user. So I'm targeting an unknown user on Google or Facebook.
And I think the profile matching with these ad networks also for unknown user would be much lesser, I think, if I'm not.
Yeah, it would be, there would be some drop-off percentage because the same ID has to be matched on Google as well as Facebook and WebEngage. So there would be some drop of users there.
So, I mean, so let's say I have 100 people who came to my website today. They just did window shopping, didn't really buy anything. Maybe they showed intent, right? Now I want to show them an ad on Facebook and Google or Google, right? So, I mean, what does the drop-off percentage sound like? Is it 20%, 30%?
I would say I think there could be a drop-off of 30 to 40%. But again, this depends on different factors. There are multiple permutations and combinations that I'd have to look at. So each case could be different. So I wouldn't want to give you a percentage number right now.
No, that's fair. But will you be covering that part in the segments as well?
Yes, I will cover how to export segments to Google and Facebook as well.
Okay. So basically, we can't do it through WebEngage. We anyways have to download the data and then upload it on Facebook and Google to do the.
No. I will cover that section. I will give you an in-depth walkthrough of how to go about it. Right?
Cool.
I don't want you to confuse yourself right now. So I'll just cover this and then go about it. All right. Okay. Moving on to the next part of the campaign. What we need to cover is the segment section. All right. Now, segments are split into two. That is live segment or static list at the end of the day. What is a live segment? Any segment that you create right now, and after this point, if it is a live segment, what happens is users who do the action, say tomorrow or day after, will be by default included in this segment as well. The next is the static list, which as the name suggests, it's static. So if I create a static list, what happens is till the point that I create a segment, who all are the users who are eligible to enter this will be part of this. After this, there will be no addition of users into the static list. Okay. Now I'll just go to the creation part of the segments. So that will give you a basic idea of what I'm talking about. Say, for example, I want to create a segment for all the users who are reachable on push. So what I can do is just give a name to the segment, reachable on push campaigns. And what I can do is directly go to the reachability section and say reachable on push. Now that's one way to go about it. Let me actually cover each section individually, so it's pretty clear for everyone. So if I'm looking at it, once you go to the live segment creation section, right, you've got three different outliers here. One is the user data that you can create a segment on. One is their behavior on your website and app, and one is the technology. Technology basically means which platform are they coming from? When is their app installation date? There are multiple factors that you can consider there as well. I am going to the use. Before I move on to explain this in detail, on the right side, what you see is the segment details once you put in all the permutations that you want your segment to be created on. So you can see how many of them are total users, how many of them are known users, how many of them are unknown, and the reachable users. So reachable basically tells you at the end of the day, these many users are eligible to receive your communication. Now, these are estimates. These would change. So ideally, once you create, This could be lesser or more than the actual number once the segment is created. Moving on to the users section. So you can create segments based on what type of visitor it is. So they could be all users. So this would basically target all the users in your segment. In your dashboard. Then you've got users who are new. What is the definition of a new user? Any user who's coming onto your website or app for the first time. So if I'm going to break it down into simple language, if session count equal to 1, it is a new user. Then it's got returning users. Returning users are users who are coming to the platform again. Session count is greater than 1 is the basic definition of this. And you can also target users based on the number of sessions. It could be equal to a particular number, or you can put greater than 2 or greater than 10 or whatever you think is the right way to go about creating a segment for yourself or for your business. So I'll just put it as all users right now. Then you can target users based on their last seen. Say, for example, I want to target all the users who have been active in the last 30 days. That is a monthly active user. What I can do is last seen is within last 1 month. So this would target all the active users who have been on my website or app in the last 30 days. Then you can also target the users based on when their user profile was created. Again, the operators are similar, which is going to be after, before, within, if it's present or not. So this basic section basically allows you to create target users who have basically logged in or come onto the platform on a particular date, which could be last 30 days, which could be last 90 days. There could be a multiple number of factors involved here. The next part is geo-filtering. You can select users based on different countries and locations, and within countries, you can go break it down further into states and cities as well. So if I'm looking at it, I can just put India here. I think India would give you a bigger idea. So if I'm looking at in terms of, let's catch Bangalore. Okay, I'll just catch Delhi for now. And in Delhi, you will see different cities that would be available. Now, this is coming from the SDK. So if your SDK is providing further information about location, we can capture and break it down further as well. In terms of operators, you can target based on any of the locations that you want or none of the locations as well. Say if you want to exclude users from a particular location, you can do that as well in the geo-filtering section. Then you've got your user attributes. In user attributes, again, there are system as well as custom attributes. Say you want to target all users whose average order value is greater than 1,000 rupees, for example, is greater than 1,000 rupees. Then you can do that as well. You can also add other attributes and combine them as well. Say, for example, and is first purchase date is within the last 30 days. You can do that as well from here. So there are multiple operators that you can play around with, and also multiple combinations of operators. So you can keep adding and removing them as well. Then you also have the option to target users based on where they have come to your website or app from. Say if you have like a first acquisition source, like a referral URL, you run a campaign on Google, then you can target them as well. You can also target them based on which page they landed on. Say if they came to a particular product page, the basic assumption could be they are coming from a Google PLA or a DPA ad on Facebook. So then you can target them specifically as well. So all of these can be tracked on Google via UTMs as well, and you can target them on WebEngage too. Then you also have the option to target users based on their user ID. So if I want to target 10 users whose user ID I already have, what you can do is say user ID is one-off, and you can put basically comma separated values, or you can also upload a list, which I'll cover a little later in the training. The next part is, like I said, reachability. You can target users based on which channel they're reachable on. You can also create a segment to know which channel they're not reachable on. So then you can include and exclude these segments from your campaigns as well. So this will ensure that your failure numbers are not bloated in campaigns. That's one way to look at hygiene on the dashboard as well. The next section is the behavioral section, which is a pretty important section. Why? Because we're targeting users based on their behavior on your website or app. So you can target users who have done particular events and also not done particular events. Say, for example, I want to target users who have added products to cart but have not checked out. What I can do is create a segment who have done add to cart, but users who did not do checkout completed at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you have the option to select any event that you have configured, and they will be available in this dropdown.
Jesse?
Yeah.
Hi, sorry. Before we continue with behavioral, in user, I had a question. So in the geotagging section, when you said we can exclude a region, just to sort of understand this precisely, if you put a location that you want to exclude, then does it automatically target the rest, excluding that section?
So
Is
right
that what it
now,
means?
if I do not put any option, I'm targeting all users across different locations.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if I say none, I'm just creating a segment where the users are not present in, say, let's say, for example, Afghanistan. So
Right.
at the end of the day, these guys are excluded, but I'm not targeting anybody from here. I'm just creating a segment of users who are not going to be from Afghanistan right now. That's all. I'm just creating a segment from that.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the behavior side, like I said, you can have multiple options of users who have done particular events and users who have not done particular events. Okay. Now, also add users who have done multiple events. Say, for example, users who have done add to cart and also done a checkout completed at least once. So these are users who have purchased a product, they have built some faith with your website and app, and then you can target them with further communications. Say, for example, if I'm going to take one client example in D2C, right? There are products that could be refurbished, right? That could be going out of, for example, if I'm buying a body cream at the end of the day would probably get over in 30 days, right? So I, as a user, would probably need to buy the product again. So in this way, you can create users who have done checkout completed and basically target them again. So you have the option to also target users at least like who have done checkout completed at least once, only once, or if they've done it multiple times, based on their price, based on their most recent time as well. So there are multiple options and operators that you can use to create your segments at the end of the day. So that's basically the behavior section. And then you've got the technology. So technology, as you can see, if you want to target users specifically on Android, iOS, and web, you can do that as well. So that's basically about it in terms of live segments. All right. Now moving on to the static segments. So static, like I said, once it's created, no additional users will be eligible to enter this segment. So like how we have created this live segment, you can create the same static segment also using the segment editor. You would just go back to the options that I had shown earlier, or you can also upload a CSV file here. I think somebody had asked about this. So you can upload a CSV file at this point in time here. So one, like how I had shown in the data management section, what you can do is just give it a segment name and upload your file here. You can also download a sample CSV here to ensure that you're entering details as per how WebEngage can read it to avoid errors at any point. So that's basically about segments. So I've covered live segments and static segments. Now coming on to the exporting part to Google or Facebook. Once the segment is created, you can see it under the segment section of the dashboard. All right. So you have got live segments as well as static segments. You can see the segment name, the number of users who are in the segment, the kind of campaigns they are part of this segment, the journeys they are part of, when it was created. You can also create tags to ensure that while you're reporting, you can report it as per your requirement. So if you want to slice and dice data based on different parameters, what you can do is add tags and they would populate here as well. Okay. Now, if you click on these three particular dots, right, what you can do is, just give me a second. Yeah, so if you click on the three dots, you can see edit, you can see delete, you can see duplicate, and you can see their tags as well. Now, this section allows you to download the list of users. If you click on export to Facebook and Google, you can directly export this segment as well. So I'll just click on export. So once you click on export, it has to be a particular size in terms of the segment. So if you look at it, if it's only 0 users and all, yeah, it will not allow you to export the segment. So for example, let me see if I can find a segment that's higher than 20. Yeah. So if I click on export to segment here, if you have added your account, then you can directly go ahead and export your segment to Facebook. Okay, so this section tells I will not be able to export this segment to Facebook. Why? Because my Facebook integration is not active. So you can click on activate integration. Once you click on that, it will take you to the integration section where you will have to add your Facebook account here. So this has gone inactive. That's the reason why it was not eligible at this particular point. So what I can do is click on activate. If everything is good, I can activate it. And once that is done, you can directly export the segment on Facebook or Google. Now, once you export the segment, you have the option to either ensure that the exporting happens automatically on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, or you can just do it as a one-time export. So you have these two options. I think somebody had asked if they have to manually go ahead and do it every day. No, you do not have to do it. You can configure it to be done on a daily, weekly, or monthly level. It's similar for Google as well. I hope the segment creation part is clear for everyone. Any questions, guys? Okay, all right. I will move ahead to the next section, which is the campaign manager, and then the journey part. So all channels that you have, right? So if you go under campaign section, campaign manager, there is an overview section. This basically, like how you have user level information, this is campaign level information. This tells you the users engaged, the campaigns, the conversions, and revenue at the end of the day across different channels. This is the overall value, and this is split by different channels. If you have enabled revenue tracking on the dashboard, then you can see revenue as well being tracked. You have the option to filter it on yesterday, last 7 days, or last 30 days, which you can see on the platform. Now, if you want to go back for a larger time period, what you can do is click on download report, and then you can put your custom dates basically from this section. So if I want to look at data for the last 7 months, then I can do that as well. And you can also do it at a campaign level or a variation level. So a variation level could be if you're doing A/B testing, then you can do it at the variation level. If you're not doing any A/B testing, you can directly do it at a campaign level. And then click on download. If you click on download, this data will be sent to your email directly. The email that is the admin on the platform at the end of the day. Excuse me, guys. You can also schedule reports so that you can receive it on a daily, weekly, or monthly level. And you can also decide the time that you want. So a few brands that I work with have an internal meeting at 11 a.m. So they want the report to be sent at 10 a.m., which can be configured. And you can also say in the data that is being sent, what is the number of data points that should have. So you can go up to last 30 days data that can be sent to your email on a day-to-day basis. And you can also select all the users that you want this email to be sent to. Say, for example, you want to send it to all the high-level people in the organization, you can do that. If you don't want everybody to receive it, then you can do that as well. So that's basically the campaign overview section. Now, even the campaign creation section, we've tried to maintain a similar UI across different campaigns. I will create a campaign in email, which should cover basically a lot more than any other channel in terms of the data points. So you can go ahead and create other campaigns as well once I've shown you how to create an email campaign. Once you click on campaign creation, once you click on new campaign, there are 4 different types of campaigns that you can create. One is a one-time campaign. As the name suggests, this would be sent immediately at the point of time that you want to send it to all the users who are eligible to receive at that particular point in time. The next type of campaign is a triggered campaign. This is solely based on behaviors. For example, if I want to target users who have added to cart, and you don't want to do it through journeys and automated fashion, and you just want one email to go out to them, you can trigger a triggered campaign for that. Then the next type of campaign is a recurring campaign. Recurring campaign could be weekend offers that you have, or if you want a particular message to be sent every Wednesday, you can just configure a recurring campaign. You can select the schedule in the campaign UI, and it will be sent on that particular day that you have configured it for. Finally, the last part is the transactional part. These are messages which are of utmost importance, and they have to be sent immediately from the platform. So there is a transactional API that we have in our documents, which you can use to trigger the transactional messages as well. Now, an important fact is that we have two separate pipelines that we've created. One is for promotional and one is for transactional. So even if your promotional messages get queued, your transactional messages will never get queued. Why? Because we are ensuring that it's a separate pipeline. These are important messages. These have to go out within the minute of, say, send, within the minute of you clicking on send. So for ease, I'm just going to talk about one-time campaigns here. So if I go ahead, under the campaign creation, there are 6 different tabs that you will have to basically add information on. And once you do that, you would be allowed to preview and launch. One is the audience section, where you would be putting in the campaign name. You would be selecting the different tags that you have added. You can select the campaign type. Say, for example, you selected one and you want to change it now. You can do that as well using the campaign type. Okay. Now in content type, you can select if it's promotional or transactional. Like I said, if it has to be immediately sent, then you need to click on the transactional section. Then you've got the audience type. If you want to select a single segment, you can do that. Remember, I had mentioned in the segments where you can include and exclude multiple segments. So what you can do is you can send data, the campaign to all users in a particular segment, and also exclude particular users. Say, for example, I want to exclude users from, say, Delhi for a Bangalore campaign. I can create a segment for Bangalore and remove the Delhi people from there. So once you create the segment, all the segments will be populated here in the dropdown, and you can go ahead and select which one you want to include or exclude. You can include and exclude multiple segments as well. So for simplicity, I'm just going to keep it to send to users in a single segment and move ahead. And I'm just going to create all users from here. Now, once you select, you can see all the users who are reachable on this particular channel in this particular segment. You also have the option to remove duplicates. Say, for example, there are multiple user IDs with the same email ID. You don't want the same email ID to receive multiple emails, right? Why? Because it's not hygienic. Second thing, there is a cost factor associated with emails, right? So you can click on the option to remove duplicates. The first part that you had to do is put in a campaign name, which I didn't mention. So you will have to put in a campaign name. Once you do that, you can move ahead. Once you do that, this save and continue will become blue, which means you can click and move on to the next step. Now, this section is when do you want to trigger your campaign at the end of the day. So again, like I said, you can make it one-time triggered or recurring. If you click on recurring, the fact that I mentioned, right, you want to configure it on a particular date, you can do that. Then you can say, I want to send it every Monday and Wednesday to particular users. You can say how many weeks you want to repeat it for and the time you want to send it to. Okay, let's say, for example, I want to do it for 10 weeks and I say 2:55 p.m. You can see the realized schedule basically. So every 14th Monday, it'll go at 2:55, then it'll go on Wednesday, then the subsequent week, it'll go again on this Mondays and Wednesdays. Now, end date, you can say that the campaign never ends, or you can say it has to end on a particular date. You can do that as well. I'm just going to make it one time. And the next part,
just one quick thing in recurring, there's a question. Can we set, say, every 1st of the month or every 5th of the month, something like that, right?
Yep, definitely. As well. So you can select the particular day as well. So if you want to basically put it for like, say 8th of Jan, you can do that as well. So every day it can be configured. So you just need to change the repeat.
Month one as well, if you can show the month schedule.
Yeah, say for example, once every month, repeat once every month. And you look at the realized schedule, you can look 1st Feb, March, April, all the months. And if I set an end date, that will change as well. I hope this answered the question.
Sanjay, did it answer the question?
So you can configure it on multiple.
So
you can
there is a specific days as well. So
yeah, specific days and dates. So you have 4 different options that you can do it on.
Yeah.
Yes. It answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm just going to make it one time again and move ahead to frequency capping, DND, queuing, and throttling. Now, remember that whatever frequency capping, DND, queuing, or throttling, if you're doing it under the campaign UI, it is for this particular campaign only. It is not for all the campaigns on your dashboard. For that, there is a separate section, which I'll talk about. So if I want to follow frequency capping settings, say, for example, if a user is eligible to receive communication from 2 journeys at one point in time, that could probably confuse the user, right? So then you can tick on the option to follow frequency capping settings, which you have set at an account level. So whatever you set at an account level has precedence over what a campaign level setting would be at the end of the day. So you can also ignore frequency capping here, which means if a user is eligible to receive 2 messages, they can be receiving it. Say if it's a transactional message, then you would probably want it to ignore frequency capping, right? So then it has to be sent to the user. So you have the option to tick and untick that. The next part is follow DND settings. Again, you can choose to follow the account level setting or ignore it. DND is basically used, for example, you don't want a user to receive a message at 4 a.m. from you, right? Why? Because it's going to be missed, most likely. So you can set a do not disturb time from 12 to 7 a.m. in the morning, so that once the user exceeds that 7 in the morning, he would be able to receive the message. The next part is queuing. Say a user by frequency capping cannot be sent the campaign message at this particular time. Up to how many days do you want to hold the message in our system, and how many should we try to send it again? So if you put do not queue, if the user is not eligible to receive this message at that particular time, it will not queue. The user will never receive the message. If you want to queue it for a particular few days, you can do that as well. You can do it for hours and minutes as well. The next part is throttling. So throttling only comes in handy when basically your user size is too big. And if you send a message to all the users, say for one example that I can think of that would be relevant right now is, say you've got 20 million users overall in your data. Now, if all 20 million users click on the campaign link that you sent and go to your platform would crash, right? So you need to ensure that it's throttled in a certain speed that it matches your website capabilities as well. So you can throttle campaigns to basically say, I want to send only 25,000 messages per minute, or you can even select the speed that you want it in terms of messages per minute that should be sent. Say, for example, your campaign has 1 million users who are eligible to receive the message. If I say throttle at say 100 per minute, what happens is every minute, 100 users would be receiving this message. That's how it will go about it. Okay. Moving on to the message section of the dashboard, of the campaign UI. So this is where you would be selecting your email service provider. Like you guys already know, there are multiple providers that we are partnering with. You can select them, or if you have configured your own separate partner as well, you can select that as well from this drop down. Okay. From name will be what your end user will be seeing in terms of who sent the message. So let's say, for example, you want to put amazon.in, you can do that as well. Then you've got the from email ID. Now this should be what the domain that you have configured and the email ID at the end of the day that you want your end user to see. Then you have multiple options. Say if you want to send a reply to message, you can configure that as well. You can put a CC in case you want to be a part of that email campaign. You can also put BCC options. Okay. Then you've got your subject line. Now, from the subject line onwards, you can use personalization tokens as well. Say, for example, you want to say hi user using the user's first name. So what you can do is click on the personalization icon. In the personalization icon, you can see user attributes as well as custom events. So what you can do is click on hi and first name. So what happens is if I have a first name that's eligible to be picked up, it would be hi Jesse for me. It would be hi Nitya for Nitya's email ID, and hi Tina probably for Tina's email ID. Now you can do first name, you can put last name, you can select a bunch of different attributes that you have configured, as well as a system attributes that you can select. Then the next section is custom events. Say you want to say target users with the product they have added to cart. So you can say, you can just select this and find the product name that they have added. Okay. For this, it would be for this particular thing, I'm not capturing product name. So I can say your product price is something, and you can look at the product price. You can add the price here. So what happens is we would be picking up the value that we have seen the user basically add the product to cart at. Now moving on to the next section, which is AMP emails. We can cover at a later section because I think that will need a little more explanation. The next part is the body. Where there are three ways that you can add email content at the end of the day. One is rich text that you can directly type in here and use your font and all of that stuff. If you are comfortable with using raw HTML, you can just copy paste that HTML here. And the third option is the drag and drop. All of these are extremely user friendly. You can use it in different ways that you want to go about. I will just explain the drag and drop editor. So if you click on the drag and drop editor, we already have a few templates that are already created, which you can select, which can probably help you. Say, for example, if you want to send a happy birthday message and you don't want to work on the entire template, then what you can do is click on this particular template and it would pop up. Now, if you don't want to do that, there are basic templates as well. And then also, if you have already created a few templates for yourself, you can find that as well here. So I'll just take an advanced template and explain it. So that would be easier. So I'm just going to use the birthday message example itself. So once I click on the birthday template, that template will be loaded into my message section. Now, there are different rows and content sections for this particular template, and you can go ahead and add your particular messages here that is relevant to your business and brand. Now, say, for example, if you have a header that is going to be used across all the emails that you're going to be sending, what you can do is click on this particular header row. You can click on save, and you can give it and mention its header that is global, which means it's going to be across all templates, and save this row. Now, once you save this row, what happens is you can revisit this at any particular time, and you can always find that row that is set up here under your rows section, and you can say header global. And once you do that, that will be loaded here, and you can just drag and drop it right here into your template. Now you can use this for header, footers, social media icons, for example. So if you have the same social media icons, you can just put it here directly. So there are ways that you can save these rows, which will help you in your campaign creation and save you and your team some time as well. Now, if you don't want to use default rows, you can just click on empty. There are different formats on which rows can be added. And so just give me 1 second. So if I click on the row that I added, yeah, just give me 1 second. Yeah, I'll just click on empty and I'll just add an empty one here. Now, once you click on it, you have the option to configure it the way you want it. So if you want to add a text box, you can click on text. If you want to add an image, you can do that. If you want to add a button, you can do that. If you want to divide that particular row into 2 sections, you can do that. If you want to add social media links, you can do that. If there is a particular section of the email that you want to add an HTML on, you can do that as well. There are videos and icons as well that you can add at the end of the day. Once you do that, there is also a settings tab, which is particularly for this particular row. So that's basically it in terms of the drag and drop editor. So like I said, you can save your rows and you can find it under the rows section. You can also save your template here. So they will pop up at the end of the day in the templates section. So if I'm looking at it, if you save the template, right? you can go back and see it under My Templates. So these are templates that I've or somebody else from WebEngage has created, and you can directly click on it and revisit them at any particular point. Now, the final part of it is you also have the option to do the mobile or desktop view to see how it's rendering across devices. And finally, you can see the preview of how your email will look on a particular device, that is desktop or mobile. So that is basically how you can use a drag and drop editor. If you're using the HTML, then you can directly go ahead and click it. So since your campaign is already configured here in drag and drop, that is why you're not eligible to click on it again. But you can always go back and make the body blank, and this would be eligible to be clicked on again. You can also add attachments to your email. And yeah, this is because I didn't add this subject. And yeah, and I haven't added from email ID, which is why it's still not blue in color. Any questions, guys, up till now?
We have a question from Sania.
So we have a couple of questions, Jesse, but I think we can wrap it up and then take a questions at the end of it. And then remaining, so after we wrap this section, I think remaining we can cover on Wednesday, same time we have the session. So we can take up the remaining stuff then, Jesse. We can wrap this
today. Okay, fair enough. Makes sense. So once you do that, you also have the option to click on test campaign. This will basically help you to send it to your test internal users. You can create a segment and basically send it to that particular segment that you want to do it to. So you can see how it's rendering on multiple devices that way. Now I'm just going to click on save and continue. Once you do the message part, then there is the conversion tracking. Once you enable that, you can select what you are going to define as a conversion from your email campaign. Say, for example, I send people who have viewed a particular product and I want them to add to cart. So then my conversion event would be add to cart. You can also set a conversion deadline. So up to how many days from the user receiving the message should I mark it as a conversion? Generally in e-commerce, everybody follows, I think, 1 day, but there are different attribution models for different businesses, right? So for a high AOV product, I would probably give it a larger timeline. You can also add control groups, which basically tells how many people should or should not receive your message. You can or cannot do it. This will basically tell you how many people are doing the action once they see your message versus once they if they do not see your message. So you can see if your campaign is actually doing more harm than good from this particular section. One thing that I quickly wanted to cover was you can also add different variations in your message. Say you want to send a birthday message in 2 different ways. Maybe play around with the subject line. You can do that as well by adding another variation. So I'll just delete it so we can move ahead to the next section. Yeah, once the conversion tracking is set, you can move ahead to the test campaign. You also have the option to skip test and proceed if you do not want to test it. And then you can click on launch campaign at the end of the day. So that's basically the email creation part of it. I'll just quickly move through the journeys because I think we're already exceeding time a little.
Jesse, I think probably let's cover journeys in the next one only, if that's fine.
Okay, I'm fine with doing covering journeys with.
So we can start with journeys next time, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then move to the analytics probably.
Okay, perfect. Makes sense. Let's do it that way then. I hope this session wasn't too overwhelming for anyone. Guys, if you have any questions, I think, yeah, I can take them right now.
So there are a couple, Jesse, in fact. So one is, what is the size requirement for making the own templates? Is there anything like that, Jesse?
Size as in, if I would probably need a little more elaboration on that question.
Sania, are you here? Can you please probably unmute and elaborate a bit?
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
So actually just wanted to ask, so there's an option to put your own templates also, right? Not the advanced one, making your own templates. So is there any specific sort of requirement or any size or just something, what are the suggestions? What do we generally do? Because there are, I think, rows where you can add images and stuff also. So what is that mostly like, what are the sizes and all that we need for that?
So in terms of, so there is no size limitation as such, all right? But in terms of industry best practices, I wouldn't go more than 2-3 scrolls of my mobile phone screen. That is a by default mantra that I use. It shouldn't go more than 2 to 3 scrolls of the screen. Why? because if your email is extended above a certain size.
No, that I understand. I just wanted to know if there's any set requirement. Generally there are some, definite sizes that we need to use, but that's nothing like that, right?
No, there's no size requirements, but in our knowledge base, we have basically documentation which tells you what are the best practices. I think we can share that with you. I think that will solve your question.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, guys?
There is one more, Jesse. So how do we, so there is a list of unsubscribed users. How do we mark them unreachable? So I think this, Deepak, we can do with the help of CSV upload. So if you can just reach out to us, we'll share the steps for this, basically.
Deepak, so you can either do a CSV upload or do it through REST APIs, whatever you're comfortable with. I think Nitya can share it with you. It's a pretty simple step. It's
and just follow on to that, Jesse, is that how can we filter out opted out users in a segment?
So you can create users who are not reachable, right? I showed you in the segment tab, people who are reachable or not reachable, right? So if they have opted out, then they're not reachable, right? So then you can filter it out by include and exclude in this campaign UI. I hope that was clear. Deepak?
Yeah, he said yes.
Okay, guys, I haven't been looking at the chat questions, but if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to ask me right now.
Hi, Jesse, Jashwant here.
Yeah.
I want a quick question. From your real world experience, which of these engagement platforms do you believe has the best return metrics on conversion, and also on another level, which doesn't annoy the customer? Like, is there any feedback you received where customers have complained a lot that this is a very annoying spam service, I don't want this here, like push notification? I'm wondering how is it being received by customers? For example, Chrome push notifications like that.
Okay, so you're talking about in terms of channels, which do you think will annoy the customer and which do you think is like the best for a particular brand, right?
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough. So if I'm looking at it, your channels of communication at the end of the day depends on your brand, which industry you're catering to. Say, for example, an e-commerce client, right? I would definitely be using push, email, and SMS. Now, when I say I'm going to be using these channels, I also have to ensure there is a balance between the communications being sent, right? Say, for example, I get a message from your push from your app at right now, and then in 2 minutes I'm getting an SMS, and then in 2 minutes I'm getting an email. So I've received 3 basic messages in 2 minutes from your brand. Now that is going to be overwhelming and it's going to annoy the user at certain points, right? So more than a channel kind of view, I would want to set a time gap between your communications. So that particular part, if you go to the settings, right? I'll just quickly show you that as well, because I think that's important. Yeah, sorry, my screen is just... yeah, if you go to the settings section, you have the option to do frequency capping and DND and throttling. So you have the option to set your messages per day across channels, the messages per week, messages per month, and also the time gap. So I would say it's important to maintain at least a 2 to 3 hour gap between each message that a user receives. So if you want to send multiple messages, feel free. If you want to send it across times, it's fine, but there should be a time gap between messages. And if I'm looking at it, industry-wise, I think in terms of e-commerce, push and email are highly used channels. People prefer to receive an email and SMS as well. So if you look at it, some stat that I was looking at, 98% of the users check out their SMS within the first 2 minutes of receiving it. So I would never say a channel is not good. I would say it's important to space your communications across channels and times.
Thank you, Jesse.
Any other questions, guys? Okay, I think, yeah, that's about it. I don't think I have any other questions, but guys, feel free to, yeah, drop in your messages to Nitya, Tina, or me, whoever, whoever you want to reach out to, feel free. We can always answer your questions. And we're also going to be having subsequent sessions taken by other members of the team as well. So yeah, you're in for a long ride with us. Thank you guys for your time.